Hi, my name is David Amoton, and I'm making this video for the Juror Project. You all asked me to make a minute or two video talking about myself, so I'll do the best I can. I've had a pretty interesting life, so I'm gonna kind of go over some of the more exciting stories, and then there'll be a lot of other things that I've left out. I'm 52 years old. Right now, I live in Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas, but I've also lived in California, Colorado, Oklahoma, and in Thailand. I've had several jobs. I've worked as an insurance adjuster and insurance sales. I've been a retail manager, a writer, an actor. I've been a teacher and a corporate trainer. And for 2 days, exactly 2 days, I was a cab driver. So I've had a lot of different experiences. Kind of one of my sort of philosophies is that, you should always be kind to other people, but just as important, be kind to yourself and never limit yourself. So whenever I felt like I'm not, as happy as I might be, or if I'm just sort of, in a rut, I don't like to just, trudge through it and just keep going because I'm afraid of the unknown. But I always thought about just doing whatever I can to make myself as happy as I could be. And you're going to notice that in some of the stories. Um, that probably started in my schooling. In my high school, I went to 7 different high schools in 4 different states. My father had passed away, and during my freshman year, and so things weren't going so well. So I even moved away from home for a while, and I'm probably the only high school dropout slash high school valedictorian that you've ever met. I was always a good student, so it was a big surprise when I dropped out in 11th grade. But then I found a school that let me go at whatever speed I could go at, and so I went really fast and did really well. And so I wound up graduating as the valedictorian, made the speech and everything, and then I moved, to California to go to college. I lived in California for quite a long time. And so in 1995, I decided I was bored and I wanted to have an adventure. So I sold all my stuff and I drove across country, stopping all different places. I wanted to see as much of my country as I could. I found some relatives that I'd never even met or even heard of at some point, and I'd call them up and say, "Hey, I'm in St. Louis and we're related. I'm coming over." And I wound up staying with a lot of interesting people and seeing a lot of really cool things. When I got to New York City, I sold my car and then I flew over to England and I spent the next 8 months backpacking through Europe and parts of Africa and Asia, and had an amazing time. I wrote a journal of all my experiences, and when I came home, it was 2 full books, and I wound up typing it up, and it was over 100 pages. So there's a lot in there, a lot of adventures, a lot of exciting stuff. But I'm only going to talk about one right now. I think probably the most exciting of all of these sort of stories was when I was being chased by a corrupt Romanian cop through through a train in the middle of Romania and Bulgaria. What happened was I was going to do this overnight trip from Bucharest over to Sofia, Bulgaria. And after I was accosted by some gypsies, that's a whole different story. I was sitting in my seat, in the train. It was, probably 11 p.m. It was very late. And this Romanian police officer came up to me and he wanted to see my papers, like you see in those old movies. And I said, "See your papers." And so I gave him my passport and everything. And I knew everything was fine. But he found something that he didn't like. And he wanted to charge me a ton of money, or he said he was going to arrest me. Well, that was really scary because even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, last thing I wanted to do was wind up in a Romanian jail cell in the middle of the night. So he was actually called away for a second. I'm not sure what happened, but he had to leave for a second. He said he was going to come right back. So as soon as that happened, I got out of there. And I wound up hiding in the bathroom of the train for about an hour. And then I came out and he wasn't there. And so for the next probably an hour or two, I was just sort of ducking around. I could see him sometimes in a car ahead of me, looking for me and looking around. And so I was sort of going from car to car, back and forth, and all that sort of thing. And it was very, espionage kind of a thing. And then as I was passing through one train car where they had all these private compartments, a man opened the door to his compartment, and he came out and he said, "What are you doing?" And so I sort of told him what was going on, and he told me to come into his car. And what he explained to me was that in Romania, back when the Soviet Union was in control of everything, the police had this ultimate power, and they abused people, and people would just disappear in the middle of the night, and that sort of thing could happen. So once the Soviet Union was disbanded, the police lost all of their power. The people did not want them to have that kind of control anymore. So the police really made no money, and they had all they could do to make money was basically to get the unexpected people who didn't know what they were doing to give them bribes and things, and that was me. So the man told me that really the people who had power anymore in Romania were the oligarchs and these mobster types who really had the power. And he was one of those mafia people. And he said that, if I wanted, I could stay in that car with him for, until we got to Bulgaria, when the guy had to, get off the train. And so I said, yeah, thank you. And at some point, that police officer did come to where we were, and he stuck his head in and started to say something. But then my new friend, he helped me out, and he said something in very strong words. And I guess he was recognized who he was, because we didn't see that police officer anymore. So that was pretty exciting. Then I did the rest of my trip. Well, I came back home after that and, did what I do, moved back to California and everything. And then about 5-6 years later, in 2001, I was bored again. So I had been on a trip to Thailand for just a vacation, and I decided that I would move there and see if that would be more exciting and kind of a fun challenge for me to do. And I decided to become a teacher. So I lived there for 6 years, and I was a teacher. I first started teaching like college students. After they were done with their regular studies, they'd come to this language school, and I would teach them English. And then I moved up from there to corporate training. People wanted to learn business English. And then I got I guess what you consider the premium kind of job for a teacher there was I was a teacher at the American School of Bangkok, which was an international high school. The owner of that school, Mrs. Lakana, she wanted the school to be very prestigious and be very in with the government, so that she would have good, they call it face, have, big face there. So she was always doing these things, and she would, for example, she had me teach the police, the Bangkok police, when there was this big conference, ASEAN conference with all the world leaders. President George W. Bush at the time was coming over, and she asked me to teach the police officers not to create international incidents. And when there was the tsunami, I had to create this sort of a relief effort, and I've worked with ambassadors from all over the world to do that. But probably the most exciting one, the strangest one, the scariest one was with the and then Harvard. I worked with Harvard when they came over for a model Congress. But anyway, so the United Nations has a building in Bangkok, and they were doing a special conference and presentation for World Water Day. Yeah, boring, right? I don't know nothing about water. But Mrs. Lakana came to me, and she said she wanted me to represent the school and come with my speech students to watch all these presentations from all these scientists and ambassadors and everything. So I said, sure, why not? I mean, I don't know anything about, I don't care about, I don't care about it, but water conservation and purity and sustainability and all this sort of thing. I don't know anything about it. But, I wouldn't have to grade homework paper, so sure, let's go. So we arrived at the UN building. And, I took my seat. They had assigned seating for everybody. And it was very much like the U.S. Senate or maybe the House of Representatives room. It was a huge hall, lots of seats everywhere. But the only difference was at the front of the room, there was this sort of dais where there was you have to climb up 8 stairs to get up there. And then there was these places for about 8 people to sit and to do their speeches. They had microphones and everything. And so, but anyway, we found our seats in the audience, and I sat with my students. And then about 5 minutes before the presentation, the conference was to start, this UN worker ran up to me, and she said, "You're David Amotin, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, what are you sitting here for?" And I said, "Well, this is my students are sitting here. This is what I'm doing." And she said, No, you're supposed to be up there." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yes, you're Mrs. Lakana. She said that you are an expert on water purity, and you're supposed to give a 10-minute speech. It starts in 5 minutes. You got to go." And she showed me the program, and there I was, right in the program. There's my name. And I was like, because like I said, I didn't know anything about it. But, she led me up there, and I took my seat. And fortunately, there was a notepad and a pen. So I started writing furiously as the other ambassadors and stuff started doing their speeches. And, well, I had a couple of advantages. I've done a lot of public speaking and a lot of improv, so that helped. And then, although I don't really know anything about, I'm not a scientist, I had gone on a trip. Earlier that year, the science teacher was taking her students on a overnight field trip on this barge where they were going to be sailing down the Chao Phraya River, which is the main river in Thailand, and they were going to be going and taking water samples and doing things like that. So she asked me if I would come along as a chaperone because it needed an extra teacher to be part of it. And again, I'd rather be on a luxury cruise than sitting on a barge in a river for 2 days, but you know what? I mean, I didn't have to create lessons plans, so yeah, let's do it. So I got on there, and although I wasn't really a part of the experiment, I wasn't actually taking water samples myself. I watched what they did, and that sort of gave the basis for what I was doing. When it was over, a lot of the other presenters and students and everybody had said that mine was probably one of the most enjoyable speeches. It definitely wasn't the most technical, but I think I kept it interesting more than the others did, and so it worked out all right. So I had a lot of different experiences doing things. I think one of the other sort of maxims that I go by is that whenever you have a really big problem that seems impossible, it's really just a lot of little small problems. And if you take care of the small problems, the big ones work themselves out. Like for example, in math, if you sit down and they give you a problem where there's 8 numbers, 42,647,000, 247, and times another 8 character number, and you've got to times that, and you look at it and you go, my head's going to explode. How am I going to figure that out? Well, right, you'll never will, unless you have a calculator. But to do it on your own, you can. But what you can do is you can just start from the beginning. 4 times 7, 4 times 6, 4 times 2, 4 times 3. And you do all these little simple, easy problems, and then before you know it, the big problem is taking care of itself. It's the same thing when I'm doing acting. One time I had to do a show where I had a 12-page monologue. It was like 20 minutes, just me talking. And you look at that and you go, your head explodes. How am I going to learn this much stuff? But again, you don't learn that much stuff. You learn one sentence. One sentence is easy. And then you do the second sentence. And then you do the third sentence. And then, a few hours later, so all of a sudden, you've got 12 pages memorized. And so that's sort of thing I look at. And there's no problem that's too big. And I think that can sort of work itself out in dealing with court situations as well. All right. So the court situations. I have never been an actual juror in a full-fledged juror anyway. But I did have 2 experiences that I think are pretty cool. Years and years ago, like decades ago, when I lived in Orange County, I was called to be a juror, and I was assigned to a case which was involving this guy who was alleged to have attacked this woman in a shopping center in a parking lot and stole a bunch of her stuff, and I think maybe did some violence, and so they did all their picking the jurors and asking them the questions and everything, and I was not called until all 12 jurors had been chosen, but then I was called as an alternate, and they did accept me for that. So while I didn't get to actually be in the juror room and do the deliberations, which would have been really interesting, I was actually got to be in the juror box for the whole trial, because it was only a couple days and nobody was going to get thrown off of the jury in that little time. So I don't remember a whole lot about the case now, but what I do remember is on the second day when we were released to go to lunch, I think there was like a food truck outside the building, so I got my food. And then when I was coming back in, the courtroom was, I think, on the 3rd or the 4th floor. So I got in the elevator, which was empty. And then just before the doors were closing, this guy walks in and stands next to me. And then I look over, and it's the defendant. It's the guy that, possibly, beat up this other lady. And I was a little nervous because, well, one, I didn't know if I was supposed to be alone with this guy. And then he was also kind of a big guy. He's kind of a little bit scary. And I'm not that big a guy. And I didn't know if he was going to be, begging me for mercy because, I could possibly be somebody who would keep him in or out of prison, or if he was going to be threatening or what. And I was sure I wasn't supposed to talk to him at all. But I think he was pretty awkward too. So we didn't really talk. And then when we got up to the 3rd or the 4th floor, whatever it was, and the doors opened, he could not have been any nicer. He was like, "Sir, please, you can go first, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good day, sir." So he was super nice. I had nothing to worry about. Anyway, that was fun. And then the other thing I did was a couple of months ago, I was in a legal focus group that I signed up for. And I think legally I can't talk about what it was about, but there was these 2 multi-million-dollar companies who were suing each other. And one of those companies arranged for this focus group so they could have lawyers for their side, and then they pretended to have lawyers for the other side, each make this case, about a 4-hour trial. And they had, deposition videos so we could watch witnesses, and they made their opening and closing arguments and all that. And then they sent us jurors into a jury room so they could have us deliberate and come up with a verdict. And I don't think they really cared about the verdict as much as they cared about what we were saying in our deliberations. And they wanted to know which of their strategies that the lawyers had done were working and which weren't, and all that sort of thing. So it was super interesting. And although I wasn't especially looking to be, the other jurors made me their foreman, so I got to sort of control the proceedings a little bit. And they were all really it was really good. And afterwards, a lot of the other jurors came up to me and they really complimented me on how I handled it. They were excited that even if I didn't agree with their point of view, I made sure that everybody got a chance to speak and that everybody got a chance to make their case. And even if they didn't want to speak, I called on them so that we could have a full discussion, and everybody was treated with respect, and I didn't allow anybody to talk over anybody else, so it could be well done, and everybody felt like they were respected. And I think that's the important thing. Too many times people today, it's not just, a disagreement, but it's like an enemy. Whether if you're a President Biden supporter or you're a President Trump supporter, and you think one is great and one's terrible, that's okay. But it's gone from I disagree with them to I think they're bad people, they're evil, and because they're evil, we don't really have to listen to what they think about what they say. We don't have to care why they think that, and think about their point of view. And that's just unproductive, and really it makes more trouble. It just makes more trouble because whatever you personally think about the different parties and the different politicians, I can tell you this: both President Biden and President Trump, both of them, they believe they're the good guy. They're not trying to do a bad job. If you think one did or one didn't, or both of them did or both of them didn't, they are doing the best they can. And I'm sure that you who are watching this right now, you think that you're a good person, and you do the best you can with any of your decisions, and we all do. We're all, I like to say, we're all the hero of our own life story. We're all doing the best we can, even if we're wrong sometimes. We're not trying to be wrong. So if you come from that place, I think you're better able to see eye to eye with people, and that's probably one of the advantages I have, because I've had all these experiences, all these different jobs, lived in all these different places, is I'm able to relate to people from all walks of life and all different viewpoints. And I can talk with people, whether it be about sports or travel or movies or politics or economy or just about even water conservation. I'm able to relate to them, and I think that helps me to make good decisions and to work better with people. So anyway, I guess that's enough. I just hope that you do choose me, because I think it'd be a really exciting and really fun thing to do. And but either way, I'm looking forward to seeing the project, and I certainly wish you the best of luck. So I guess I'll sign off now. But thank you very much for listening. And of course, choose me. Thanks.